Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1375B, and today's date is September 11th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Middle East Has Fallen. Now, what happens to the dollar? Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we can see that the Cabal, they've been putting a lot of pressure on North Korea. They've been provoking North Korea. We have China and Russia, on the other hand, trying to calm the situation down because they know exactly what the Cabal wants. They want some type of war. And right now, we can see that the Chinese banks, they are suspending North Korean transactions. Now, they're trying to abide by the existing sanctions. They don't want more sanctions on North Korea. They're trying to stop that completely. But what we're seeing is that the Chinese state banks, they've started suspending transactions through accounts held by North Koreans, making it nearly impossible to do business between the two countries. Now, the news out there is saying that, yes, there are branch offices of at least three major state banks, the Bank of China, China Construction Bank, and Agricultural Bank of China in the northeastern border city of Yanji, and they've banned North Koreans from opening accounts. Now, the Chinese banks have yet to freeze the accounts completely, meaning that North Koreans can still withdraw money from them, and they can also deposit money into their accounts. So we see right now it's not a full ban, but they're trying to abide by these sanctions that have been put into place. Now, very interestingly, YouTube, they have removed what they're calling a North Korean propaganda channel, and they're saying that they violated the community guidelines. They decided to bring it down, and this channel basically had around 18,000 subscribers. So they're cutting off everything from North Korea. They don't want any news coming out of North Korea, and it might be that they're ready to do something in North Korea. Now, we're going to have to watch the situation very closely because we can see at this point that they're running out of time. Remember, their whole entire system is built on going into countries, and I'm talking about the Cabal system, having regime change, taking over the countries, and spreading debt further and further and further, and especially in those countries that have a lot of oil or natural resources, stealing those natural resources, using the oil, and at this point, they are running out of time because we can see that the Middle East is completely falling apart. It looks like they're going to have a very tough time trying to stir up some type of war in Ukraine right now because it looks like German Chancellor Angela Merkel, well, she's expressed support to Putin. His proposal is to deploy a UN peacekeeping contingent to the eastern Ukraine to protect the OSCE monitoring mission there, and Chancellor Merkel added that the peacekeeping mission should not be limited only to the contact line, but it should also be in Donbass. And Putin said he'll look at this, and it looks like they've already created a draft back in September 5th, where this is a UN draft resolution where they're looking to send UN peacekeepers to the eastern part of Ukraine. So it looks like he's trying to calm the situation down. They want a peacekeeping force there. They don't want war to spark up there. Even though Lindsey Graham and McCain were out there saying this is the year of the offensive, at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, and it looks like Putin is cutting all of this off. Now, Russia is out there, and they're trying to have or work with Qatar and other Arab countries to work out some type of peace deal between all these countries and iron out the issues between all of these countries. Right now, Kuwait and the United States, they've been mediating to reach a breakthrough in the 3-month-long crisis. And we see right now that they have sides talking to each other, and Russia is joining in, trying to help with the situation. Now, something very interesting. We know that the Saudi king is going to be visiting Russia later on, or I should say the crown prince is going to be visiting Russia later on this year. And we see that there was a surprise meeting between Netanyahu and the crown prince before he goes to Russia. Now, this is very interesting because we can see that Saudi Arabia is moving closer and closer to Russia. So is Egypt, so is Iran, so is Iraq. And we see at this point, Saudi Arabia was behind all the terrorist groups in Syria and they're the ones who supported the Islamic State, just like all the other countries around the area, including Israel, the Mossad, the United States, the UK. And it looks like this is now all falling apart in this area, and these countries are looking to speak to other countries, and those who are in deep with the terrorists or the paid mercenaries, they're looking to stop this from happening and making sure that, certain things aren't said. And it looks like this is why this meeting is going on right now. Now, it looks like out in Syria and Jordan, we see Jordan expects that all de-escalation zones will be established in Syria as soon as possible. Like I said before in a previous report, the Red Cross has already reported that these de-escalation zones, they've calmed the violence down quite a bit. Individuals are coming back to the country, and we can see right now that there are more and more de-escalation zones being set up. Now, so far, 3 zones of de-escalation have been established in Syria, in the south along the border of Jordan, in eastern Ghouta, and to the north of Homs. And we can see there's a 4th one that's going to be set up in Idlib. And as Russia and Syria take over more and more of these areas, they're going to be setting up a lot of more of these de-escalation zones, which makes it very difficult for these paid mercenaries, these terrorists, to establish and get hold of certain areas. Now, 2 Western-backed Syrian rebel groups fighting the Syrian army and the Iranians and the Russians, well, they were told to basically retreat back to Jordan because the battle right now is lost. And it looks like at this point, the Free Syrian Army, they are moving out of Syria right now because there is nothing left for them to do. And we see there's a race for Deir ez-Zor. We see the Syrian armed forces, they are moving in, trying to take over the military airport. We also see the U.S. is on the other side, and the Islamic State is basically doomed at this point. And it looks like the Syrian armed forces, they are ready to liberate the military airport. They have the Islamic State completely surrounded right now, and they are stuck. All supply lines are cut off from them. There really is no hope for them at this point. Now, what we are seeing is that the Syrian war, it's coming to an end. Now, in the beginning of the war, the corporate media, the Cabal, they were all out there saying that Assad was a dictator. We need to go in there. This is a grassroots uprising in Syria, just like in Libya and the rest of the countries, and we need to get rid of Assad. And they use this all throughout the campaign to have a regime change. Now we're heading to the end of this war, where all the paid mercenaries are being pushed out of the country, and the corporate media, they're quite quiet about this, of what's really going on here. And they're really not out there. So when we look at this, there were billions of taxpayer dollars completely wasted. We see that civilians' lives, many were lost during this whole period of time. Many people had to leave their houses, and this is why we've seen the refugee crisis. Now, none of the government officials ever wanted to get to the root of the problem of why we have these refugees. Of course, they blamed it on Assad, they blamed it on everything else except the real reason. Because if you notice, as Assad is taking back control of his country, and they're setting up these de-escalation zones, all these refugees are coming back to the country. They never wanted to leave in the first place. They wanted to go home. Just like the people in Florida and Texas who evacuated, they just want to go home. They don't want to leave that area. The same thing with Syria, the same thing with Iraq, same thing with Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Yemen. Every place the United States went into, and I should say the Cabal, where they created war in these countries, they created a place where people just couldn't live and people had to leave the country. This is why we had the refugee problem. No one wants to admit to this. Nobody wants to even say it. But that is the problem, because we could see once the United States and the paid mercenaries are moved out of the country and they're being pushed out of these countries, we see all these people, they are just coming back to the country. So who controlled these paid mercenaries? Well, it was the United States. It was the Cabal. And we see right now that we're getting warnings that the Islamic State, around 11,000 of them, they have around 11,000 authentic Syrian passports that are completely blank. And this is coming out of the German authorities. And they're saying this is a huge concern because they can go anywhere with these blank passports. Now, of course, where did they get them? They were given to them because they understand and they know they need to let these people escape and leave. Basically, it's a mop-up operation. This is what we've been seeing in Syria for quite a while, where they've been mopping up, destroying evidence, destroying the paperwork, getting the Islamic State, airlifting them out of there because they don't want to leave any evidence behind. And we can see right now that all these countries are very worried. They're building it up that the Islamic State now is coming into these countries and there might be some type of an event. Again, coming out of site intelligence, they're saying that the Islamic State is getting ready to poison the food sources. And all of this is being made up to make us believe that they still have power. They have no power at this point. They are beaten. Plus, we know they are controlled by the United States, by Mossad, by the UK, and the coalition forces. So what is happening right now? Well, it looks like the Middle East is falling. It's done for. It's fallen. They can't get into Syria. It is a lost cause, which means they can't get into Iran. Libya right now is dealing with Russia. They're taking back their country. Yes, the UN is trying to get involved in this, but Trump is already saying hands off of Libya right now. We see Iraq is siding with Russia, dealing with Iran, getting ready to build a pipeline coming through this area. Lebanon, they're removing the Islamic State. So this whole entire push to get the Middle East, to get the natural resources on the dollar, this is all coming to an end. So what happens to the dollar now? Because we can see things are speeding up. They are accelerating right now, where the dollar is going to start losing a lot of value. And there's nothing the Cabal can do. Well, there is something. They could have some type of an event. This is why they have North Korea right now. This is the only thing they have left. There's nothing left for them to do at this point, unless they have some type of an event. Even Venezuela right now is shifting away from the dollar, and they're going to be dealing in the yuan or ruble. They're moving away, and most of these countries are moving away from the dollar. They are preparing themselves for what is coming. So this means the dollar is on its last leg. This means these countries are going to be setting the dollar back. This means that we're going to see inflation one way or another. The Fed will not be able to keep inflation out of this country because the value of the dollar is going to decrease as more of these dollars come into this country. They've been trying to offload the inflation for a very long time. They've been putting it into the stock market. They've been putting it into the housing market, to the student loan market, the auto loan market, sending it overseas to other areas. But eventually what's going to happen, because they knew this, these dollars, they're going to come back because countries don't have to hold them. And here we are. We've been talking about this for a very long time. And here we are at the end stage of all of this. And we're getting warnings from all over the place that a catastrophe is about to happen. The economy is going to go into recession. We even have Deutsche Bank, Citi, and the rest all showing these indicators, letting us know that things are rapidly falling apart. Now, as we can see, this is just going to accelerate. Look at it. Look at all of this from your own eyes. Look at throughout time what has happened here. Retail has completely imploded. Manufacturing is imploding. Housing is declining. We know that all these numbers are completely fake, phony, and false. Do you really think that this is going to improve anytime soon? No, it is not. Now add on to this, where we don't have the tax receipts going into the federal government, tax receipts going into the state governments. They are declining. Corporate revenue is not there. Yes, earnings might be because they're able to manipulate that, but revenue and sales, they cannot hide. And the Middle East has fallen. The dollar is doomed. This is why the BRICS, Russia, China, and the rest of the countries, this is why they're moving away from the dollar. This is why they've been ramping up on precious metals, gold, because they know what's coming. They understand they need to prepare and get ready for this major collapse. And this is what everyone needs to do. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.